Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at Ada Lovelace, the so-called first computer programmer. We've got excerpts from a biography about her life, and we're going to try and answer a few questions along the way, like who was she really? What did she actually contribute? And why does any of it even matter today?
Well, what's really interesting about Ada Lovelace is that her story, it goes so much deeper than just like being the first programmer.
Yeah.
She was born during this time of incredible scientific advancement and societal change. And her life was really this fascinating blend of privilege and struggle, logic and imagination.
Yeah, you can't really talk about Ada Lovelace without talking about her father, right? Lord Byron, the romantic poet. Talk about an intimidating legacy.
Absolutely. And it really shaped her life in so many ways. Her mother was actually determined to steer Ada away from what she perceived as Byron's madness, really pushing her towards math and logic from a very young age.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how that early influence shaped Ada's thinking, right? I mean, imagine growing up with that kind of pressure, that expectation to be a certain way.
It's a fascinating dynamic to consider. On the one hand, she had this incredible privilege, access to the best education and tutors, mingling with some of the brightest minds of the time. But on the other hand, she was constantly being compared to her father, and her mother was very strict about pushing her towards logic and reason.
It's almost like she had this kind of predetermined path.
Right.
And yet, despite all that, despite a childhood riddled with illness, she thrived intellectually. She even came up with this term, poetical science, to describe her own approach to knowledge. What do you make of that? I mean, it sounds almost like a superpower, using both logic and imagination to try and understand the world.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It was truly unique for her time. And it's something that really set her apart from other mathematicians and scientists of the era. Think of it this way. Instead of just crunching numbers, she was looking for patterns, for deeper meaning, for connections that others might miss. She even applied that approach to some of the more fringe scientific trends of the day, like phrenology, the study of skull shapes, or mesmerism, which dealt with hypnotic suggestion.
So she wasn't afraid to explore some of the more unconventional ideas of the time,
Yeah.
even if they turned out to be, well, a bit off the mark.
Exactly. It speaks to her insatiable curiosity and her willingness to look beyond the surface. And it was the same kind of open-mindedness, this blend of logic and imagination that would ultimately lead her to cross paths with a man who would change the course of her life. Charles Babbage, their meeting orchestrated through their mutual friend Mary Somerville, was truly a meeting of minds. Babbage was working on this groundbreaking machine called the Analytical Engine. It was essentially a mechanical computer designed to carry out complex calculations automatically.
Wait, so we're talking about actual gears and levers,
Yeah.
like a giant clockwork contraption that could do math. I'm already getting steampunk vibes.
Exactly. It was a truly revolutionary idea for its time. The Analytical Engine was designed to be programmable using punch cards, and it had all the essential components of a modern computer: a central processing unit, memory, and input-output mechanisms.
Hold on, let's rewind for a second. Babbage had already invented something called the difference engine, right?
Right, that was his earlier invention, designed specifically for calculating mathematical tables. But the Analytical Engine, that was a whole different beast. It was intended to be a general-purpose computing machine, capable of solving a wide variety of problems, not just crunching numbers.
Okay, so back to Ada. What was it about the analytical engine that captivated her so much?
She saw something in it that even Babbage, its creator, hadn't fully grasped. Ada understood that this machine had the potential to manipulate symbols, not just numbers. She imagined it composing music, creating graphics, essentially anything that could be represented symbolically. This was a huge conceptual leap.
So she was thinking way beyond just math equations. She saw the bigger picture, the potential of this machine to create.
Precisely. And that's where her famous notes on the Analytical Engine come in. She translated an article about the machine written by an Italian engineer named Manabria, but her notes were much more than just a translation. They were 3 times longer than the original article itself, filled with her own insights and observations.
So it was in these notes that she laid out her vision for how the analytical engine could be used, her understanding of its true potential.
Yes. In her notes, Ada described how the machine could be programmed to perform complex operations using algorithms. And one of the most famous examples is what we call Note G, where she lays out a step-by-step algorithm for the Analytical Engine to calculate a sequence of numbers called Bernoulli numbers.
Okay, I'm going to need a little help here. What exactly are Bernoulli numbers, and why are they so important?
Good question. Bernoulli numbers are a sequence of numbers that pop up all over mathematics. Especially in number theory and calculus, they're used in all sorts of calculations, from figuring out the sum of powers of integers to approximating certain functions.
So Ada devised an algorithm, a set of instructions for this machine to calculate these complex numbers. It's like a recipe for the machine to follow, right?
Exactly. And many consider this Note G to be the first computer program ever written. It's a remarkably sophisticated piece of work, and it really demonstrates Ada's deep understanding of both the machine's logic and the power of algorithmic thinking.
But wait, there's always this debate about whether Ada was truly the first programmer, right?
That's true. There's a lot of discussion about the extent to which Babbage himself contributed to the ideas in Ada's notes. Some historians argue that she was more of an interpreter of his ideas, while others maintain that she made significant independent contributions.
So it's hard to say for sure who deserves the credit for being the first. But regardless, Ada's notes are still considered a groundbreaking work in the history of computing.
Absolutely. They show a remarkable grasp of the potential of computers to do far more than just crunch numbers.
Okay, but there's one thing that always throws me off. If Ada was so visionary about the power of computing, how do we explain her rejection of artificial intelligence? She famously stated that the analytical engine couldn't originate anything, that it could only follow instructions. Wasn't that a bit contradictory?
That's a great question, and it gets right to the heart of Ada's thinking. She believed that the analytical engine, while powerful, was ultimately a tool. It could process information, follow rules, and produce outputs. But it couldn't come up with those rules itself. It couldn't think independently or creatively.
So she was drawing a line between what we might call computation and cognition, between the ability to follow instructions and the capacity for true intelligence.
Yes. And it's a distinction that's still relevant today as we grapple with the capabilities and limitations of artificial intelligence. Ada's insight was that machines, no matter how complex, are still fundamentally different from the human mind.
Okay, now I'm really curious. If she were alive today, what would Ada make of all this? I mean, we have AI generating art, composing music, writing code, things that seem to require some level of creativity.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Would she see these as genuine forms of creativity or just complex simulations based on algorithms?
It's a question that really gets you thinking about the nature of intelligence and creativity. What do you think?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think Ada would be fascinated by the advancements in AI. She was always pushing the boundaries of what was possible, always asking questions about the nature of knowledge and creativity. And I think she would see modern AI as a powerful tool for exploration and discovery, but maybe not as a true replacement for human ingenuity.
So maybe she'd say that while AI can mimic some aspects of creativity, it still lacks that essential spark, that ability to truly originate something new.
Exactly. And she might even argue that the real power of AI lies in its ability to augment human creativity, to help us explore new ideas and possibilities that we might not have considered on our own.
So Ada Lovelace, brilliant mathematician, visionary thinker, and maybe a little bit skeptical of AI.
Absolutely. But even though she had her doubts about artificial intelligence, there's no doubt that she was a pioneer in the field of computing. Her work on the analytical engine helped to lay the groundwork for the digital age we live in today.
And her story is a reminder that innovation often comes from unexpected places. The daughter of a romantic poet, she became a pioneer in the world of computing. It's a pretty remarkable legacy.
It is, and it's a legacy that continues to inspire people today, especially women in STEM fields. Ada Lovelace is a role model for anyone who dares to dream big and push the boundaries of what's possible.
Now that's a great segue into talking about her lasting legacy. So even though the analytical engine was never actually built during her lifetime, it's clear that her ideas had a huge impact.
Oh, absolutely. The programming language Ada, which is still used today, is named in her honor. There are countless awards and scholarships given out in her name, and she's become this incredible symbol for women in STEM. I mean, there are even comic books and graphic novels about her.
Wow. It really is amazing. You think about this woman living in the 1800s, grappling with these ideas that were so far ahead of her time. It makes you wonder what she would have achieved if she'd had more time.
It's a tragic loss for sure. She died from cancer at just 36 years old. Imagine what she could have accomplished if she'd lived a longer life.
I know. It's hard not to think about all the possibilities.
But even in her short life, she managed to light a path towards the future of computing, a path that we're still walking today.
So what does this all mean for us listening in the 21st century? Why should we care about Ada Lovelace?
Because her story is a reminder that innovation can come from anywhere, from challenging assumptions, from blending different fields of study, from imagining possibilities that no one else can see. I mean, here you have the daughter of a poet, becoming a pioneer of computing. If that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will.
It really makes you think. One thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of poetical science, how she blended logic and imagination. It seems like such a crucial skill in today's world,
Yeah.
especially with technology evolving so rapidly.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that we need both sides of the coin. We need the analytical, the logical, the data-driven side. But we also need creativity, intuition, the ability to connect seemingly unrelated ideas.
To step back and see the bigger picture, the human context.
Exactly. And I think Ada Lovelace embodies that beautifully. She wasn't afraid to ask big questions, to challenge the status quo, to imagine a future that was radically different from her present.
And that's a lesson we can all take to heart, right? To be curious, to be open-minded, to never stop learning and exploring.
Absolutely. Ada Lovelace's legacy is a challenge to all of us to think differently, to dream bigger, and to never underestimate the power of human ingenuity.
Well said. This has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored Ada Lovelace's life, her groundbreaking work with Charles Babbage, and her lasting legacy. But I think what really sticks with me is this idea of poetical science, this beautiful blend of logic and imagination that allowed her to see beyond the limitations of her time and to imagine a future where machines could create.
And it's a future that's still unfolding, right? We're living in a world that Ada Lovelace helped to shape, a world where computers are no longer just calculating machines, but tools for creation, for expression, for pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And as we continue to explore the ever-evolving landscape of technology, it's worth remembering Ada Lovelace's belief that while machines can process and follow instructions, they can't truly originate. So as you encounter those incredible AI creations, ask yourself, is this true originality? Or is it something else? Something amazing, for sure, but perhaps not quite the same as the spark of human creativity. That's something to ponder, something to keep in mind as we navigate this brave new world of AI.
A world that Ada Lovelace, in her own way, helped to imagine.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dives into the extraordinary life and legacy of Ada Lovelace. Thanks for joining us.